Today, dear viewers, I thought I'd start with something a little bit different. Now, I know all of you bookish fans out there love a good bookshelf tour, and today I'm just going to start off this final video of my top 10 of 2022, which is giving you a little tour of my bookshelf. Now, this was a fantastic Christmas present from my grandma, and this is my TBR shelf beside my bed. We've got Assassin's Apprentice. I just started this with the Key Mark Discord readathon. The Monsters We Feed by Thomas Howard Riley. Of course, the Master Sanderson himself. J.C.M. Burns' Wistful Ascending, one of the sci-fi fantasy bookish community's hidden gems, although Andrew over at Andrew's Wizardly Reads keeps shouting about it. A.J. Calvin's The Moon's Eye. I showed this off of my YouTube shorts the other day. History book by the seminal Dan Jones. Of course, Janny Wirtz's masterpiece, Book 2 in The Wars of Light and Shadow. A book about the English Lake District, and a cool Tolkien book my sister got me. And then over here, it's still a little bit of a work in progress. But at the top, we've got some awesome novellas. This is my favourite novella I read. It's called The Battle That Was Lost by Michael S. Jackson, author of Ringlander. And yeah, it's my favourite novella. Starbinder by Mark Timoney. He was kind enough to send me a copy that I won in a giveaway. And he wrote a fantastic book called Blood the Spear that I really need to get to this year. And then, of course, A.J. Calvin's The Ballad of Alchemy and Steel, which came the other day. Now, the rest of these, we've got my prized possession, The Way of Kings Leatherbound, and many chonkers there. My good friend R.R. Verdi, who wrote the first binding. Dreams Are Dying, Petrick Loves That One, Last of the Lanterns, P.L. Stewart. Ascendant, Michael R. Miller. He is an awesome guy, awesome author, lovely guy. A new edition, 11th Cycle, Sons of Darkness, of course, the very famous Crystal Mattar's Legacy of the Brightwash. And of course we have Way of Kings over here. Now within these books, these chonker tomes, there are the final two of my top 10 books of 2022. But which ones will they be? Stick around to find out. Hi guys, welcome back to Hobbit Hole Books. My name is Matt, also known as Miggins on Twitter, and today I bring you the finale to my top 10 SFF books of 2022. Yes, today I am bringing you two books to finish off this list. I just simply couldn't decide between them both. They just awed me in equal measure. I cannot say enough good things about them, so I wanted to dedicate a video solely to these two books and explaining just why I love them. Now, before we dive right in, just a quick reminder to please hit that like button or that subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet, and the notification bell so you're notified when new videos come out, when I put new content on the channel. It really helps the channel grow, and I love talking about books with you guys and just sharing some general chaos. Now, I do actually have some honourable mentions as well on this list, so we're going to start off with 3 honourable mentions that just didn't quite make the list, but are also very worthy of your time in 2023. First up on the honourable mentions is Seekers, The Winds of Change by Mr. Troy Knowlton. Now, if you missed it, I will post a video of the interview, the 2-part interview I did with Troy. That was my first ever interview. I had a lot of fun, and Troy is just an awesome guy, so go check him out. All his social media links will be down below. But I loved Seekers Winds of Change. It's a kind of YA-esque fantasy, but it definitely didn't sort of detract from it. I know there's a sort of assumption, a bias around YA, and I had a really good time. I took a chance with this on NetGalley, and Troy's become one of my closest friends ever since. And no, that's not why it's on the list. It's on the list because it's a fun read. It's a fun read because it's got an Indiana Jones-esque feel to it, mixed with some kind of Middle Eastern flair to it, which gave it a kind of unique, diverse feel. And I just remembered his character so well. In particular, Squall, he was a character that really stood out to me. Now, it was a great debut, and there were some really interesting character depths, although I felt that it could have gone further. And I'm really excited to see where Troy goes, so he definitely takes a spot on the honourable mentions for my 2022 list. Now, next up is the seminal author, P.L. Stewart. If you're anywhere near the bookish indie community on Twitter, you will know PL. I don't know why in my head I instantly just kind of had the thought that he's like the granddad of book Twitter, because he's not that old, but PL is like, he's the grand sentinel of book Twitter. He's written his own, or he's writing, shall I say, his own saga worthy of being a grand sentinel. He is writing the Drowned Kingdom saga, and I was very lucky that I got a copy of the audiobook of Book 1, A Drowned Kingdom, which is, funny enough, Book 1 in the Drowned Kingdom saga, and it is a sort of a faux retelling of the Atlantis myth with PL's own twists on it, and we follow the absolutely miserable character of, what's his name? I'm sorry, PL. I'm sorry, I've let you down, PL. I've let you down. The Drowned Kingdom saga follows Offren, who is this kind of snobbish, bigoted young prince of this Atalantian empire, and it's not really a spoiler to say that this empire collapses and he finds himself having to find his own way in new lands, and he's kind of, as PL has said himself, he's going to kind of go on a journey over these 7 books that the planned saga is, and he's going to kind of grow and discover and change. And it was a fantastic read. I think it's quite a heavy tome, it's quite a hefty tome. I mean, this can be used as a home protection, you know, just one whack. You know, that was to stop any thief. The best way I can describe it, something like the Canterbury Tales, but brought to life in a modern way. It reads like a history book almost, and that's one of its greatest strengths. It's got a really interesting tale to be told. Now, I will admit that I did struggle a little bit with the first one. I think that the story, the way that it's written, is very deliberately written that way by PL, and it much more suited reading it in the physical form, at least on a Kindle. Once I kind of switched over, when I was kindly gifted a copy by PL in a giveaway, I was finding the process much smoother. I'm sort of about 12% into book 2. It's on my list for this year to start, and I was absolutely loving book 2. You know, book 1 was really good, and the prose is exquisite, it excels, it's, you know, honestly I can say it's very close to a Janny Wirtz level of prose. I think Janny is unique and nobody writes quite like her, but PL is definitely, although having his own style and flair, he's definitely emulating that sort of a flowery style. It was a delicacy, just like Janny's prose is, and it's definitely one that everybody should check out. But book 2 absolutely starts off where book 1 left off, and it's absolutely rip-roaring, and it absolutely took me by storm, and I don't even know why I haven't got back to it yet, because genuinely I'm feeling that book could be on my top 10 of 2023. So sadly it didn't make the list this year because there are so many good books, but stick around to next year, you never know, the sequel. Definitely worth a read. I feel like I didn't really give much of an idea of what the plot is, but essentially it's a snobbish Prince Offren whose kingdom collapses around him, and his whole world kind of view kind of collapses, and he's forced to go across these other kingdoms, and he wants to conquer them. He still believes that he's kind of like the chosen one. He's got the gods on his side, and he's going to learn that it's not going to be easy, and his prejudices may not actually be reality. I think it's a really interesting take that this is a fantasy world with a very mythical style to it, a very mytho-historic style, should I say. But it's also, at its core, this story about a man in the process of change, or a boy in the process of change as he becomes a man. I'm really interested to see how that goes, and I think you guys should check it out too if that sounds interesting to you. PL is a wonderful champion of indie books, self-pub books, and he does a great job over on Steve Talks Books with page chewing with him and Taylor from Made Between the Pages. Go just check out his works, check out his content. It's just, yeah, good. And then the third book on the list was Ruin by Mr. John Gwynne. Now, I will link up, if you want to see, there's my reaction video, and then I'll also link later my review to Ruin by John Gwynne. Now, I think this was actually my favourite book by Mr. Gwynne. I think this kind of really showed how his prose and his character development has grown and gotten better over the series. Mr. Gwynne harkens back to a classic fantasy in a modern style, and that's often said about him, and it's definitely true. And this one is really where it kind of hits the ground running for me. I think there are still elements there where he kind of does jump ahead on the emotion a little bit and doesn't quite stay in the emotion, but it's for these crazy climactic battles, and it really sets the stage for the final book, of which I started and I still need to finish. I think that Faithful and the Fallen is a wonderful series. It's not my favourite of all time, which is why it's on the honourable mentions, but I think he is a fantastic author, very, very worthy of your time, and he has some wonderful sons as well who do a great booktube channel. I'll link them down below as well, the brothers Gwynne, and they do a lot of historical fiction, so definitely check them out, as well as their father, affectionately known as Papa Gwynne by the brothers. I think his stories are inventive. It's definitely, there's a lot of research that goes into them. I'll definitely keep reading on John Gwynne's various series, and I think you guys should too, if you haven't checked them out. But it's on the honourable mentions list. I think it doesn't quite hit that level of emotion for me, but it's definitely still a very, very worthy read if you want to get into your modern fantasy that kind of harkens back to its classic roots. Definitely John Gwynne, but especially, remember, Mr. Cahill, Ryan Cahill. I think he just kind of tops out John Gwynne just a little bit. Right, with that over, it is now time to get to the main event, the main climax. Which books have I put on my number one list? So these books, I'm going to have a little fun. I'm going to talk around them a little bit. These books, why couldn't I choose between them? Why was it so hard? What was my experience reading them? Why are they worthy of the number one spot? Well, it's very interesting because actually the first book I started at the beginning of the year. And I read 50% of it in about 3 weeks, and it took me another 4 or so weeks to read the rest, which, considering this one is an absolute chonker, it's about 770 pages in physical, and I read it on the Kindle where it was 1,000 pages. Oh boy. And it absolutely started the year off with a storm. I mean, that end of Darkness and Light and previous to that of Blood and Fire just absolutely started the year off on a roller coaster. But this one, it really took me on a journey. And then the second book on the list, and again, why it kind of joint number one with this with each other, it's because this one took me on a journey as well. Now, it's interesting because, as I said, they're very similar. They both took me on a journey. They're both very emotionally complex and rich. They're both very world-building heavy and rich. They're both chonkers. Well, on the one hand, you have Break Immortals by Thomas Howard Riley, which I would argue is actually slightly more plot-driven than the other book. It's got this fantastic Indiana Jones-esque feel to it, which I actually really love. I've read several of those books like that. I've just reviewed Ruination. I'm just going to record a video for that. I've just written my Goodreads review for that. And that has an Indiana Jones-esque feel. Seriously, authors, if you're watching my channel and you're feeling, do I want to reach out to him and get him to read my books? If you have an Indiana Jones style adventure, I will read it. I'm really excited in the new year to be reading Engines of Empire by Erin M. Evans. I've heard a lot about that. I'm also reading Draconis by David Oliver. That's another one like that. So seriously, if you have Indiana Jones-esque kind of lost treasure MacGuffins in your book, I will love your book, probably. Yeah, it's this kind of rich blend of that and a serial killer thriller, and then this fantasy epic scope saga, which we barely even sort of scratched the surface of yet. And then on the other hand, you have 11th Cycle by Kian N Ardalan, which came in at the end of the year with a sucker punch to my emotions. I mean, seriously, if you guys love emotional damage, read 11th Cycle, because this book will destroy you and remake you. Yes, actually, they're very similar. They're both chonkers. They're both epic scopes. They've got massive world building, very inventive world building. But as I said, Eleventh Cycle is slightly more introspective, slightly more emotionally driven, character driven, whilst Break Immortals has that aspect to it, but it's actually far more plot driven, and I think they both offer some really nice flavours that both viewers, I have more than 2 viewers, I hope, unless where all these phantom viewers are coming from, but all that you viewers will enjoy both of them. Now, let's get into specifics. Specifics. You know the word I'm trying to say. Let's get it down. Not like that. So, I'm going to start. Break Immortals is set in this world called Lumina World, and we follow really the main protagonist is Aaron, and he is a drug-addicted detective, yes. I know what you're thinking, drug-addicted detective, we've had that before, but not in fantasy. Well, actually, we have had a few in fantasy, but not like this one. I think Thomas actually did a really good job of straying away from the kind of tropes of that trope. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. That's the chaos we embrace here. Anyway, so we follow Aaron, who's this drug-addicted detective, and he is searching for magic users. In particular, one called Kian Reagan. He is a serial killer, an insane serial killer who wants to become a god. So he's not just a killer, he's a serial killer and an insane one, and he wants to become a god, which just, if you know any insane serial killers, it's probably not a good thing that they want to become a god and that they have that possibility. And then you also have, on the other hand, our other protagonist called Gwynne, and she hates the magic detectives, and she is on the hunt for Aaron. This kind of chase ensues where both of them are chasing this serial killer Kian Reagan to try and stop him becoming this god, and then Gwynne is chasing Aaron, and the way their stories intersect and their different groups intersect, it's really interesting to watch play out. In particular with Gwynne, there's a lot of emotional richness and depth there. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of heartbreak, and this book is dark, guys. Both of these books are actually grimdark. They're both really, really dark, but I would say Break Immortals is slightly lighter. There's moments of humour. We have Corin, who is a swashbuckling drunkard, and he is absolutely hilarious, and I love him. He was my favourite character in this. We have so many interesting side characters, like the man with the bells, and he's like this kind of assassin jester with bells on his feet, and there's so much mystery and intrigue, and then you have this really physicsally based magic system. It's based on kind of like light and refraction. How you kind of see this is that these magic users leave traces behind, and you use kind of like these spectacles or these monocles. I don't know what it's called. The little round thing you put up to your eye, and they have different kind of colours to it, and it's incredibly inventive, it's incredibly scientific. It did get a bit heavy at times for me. That did kind of play in at the end when I got a bit confused about how it all played out with the finale. But what made this book stand out? Well, its world building, its history was just literally thousands of years of history, and this puts some people off. There's mentions of things that get mentioned once and don't come up again. And for me, it really builds this rich picture of a world that's lived in, a world that has a history, a world that's survived for centuries, that has had wars and famine and light and darkness, rises and falls of kingdoms. And it really kind of brings that sense of this is a reality to it. For others, it's kind of a bit overwhelming, and I totally understand that. But for me, the world building, one of the standouts of this. Then also the characters, and Thomas is one of those authors that knows when to stay with the emotional damage, and this book has some really heartbreaking sequences. It made me cry. I think there's really a lot to be gleaned from this book, and Thomas is a really rich author in that aspect, and really it's that whole journey it took me on that makes this #1, and that is stuck in my mind. And it also has fantastic action sequences. There's one in particular kind of playing out in my mind now as I speak, and it's scary, it's brutal, it's violent, it's gritty, it's just everything I could have hoped for in a book. A mix of kind of light-hearted wit and humour at times with Corin and other characters, and Indiana Jones kind of pulpy kind of treasure hunt, and then there's a serial killing murderer. That's the same thing. There's a serial killing person who wants to become a god, and you have that detective thriller in there, and then you have magic bubbles. Like you literally could not stuff any more in if you tried. I think this book is just absolutely wonderful, and I am now reading The Monsters We Feed, which is Thomas's not a novella, which started out as a novella and soon became a 300-page book because he just can't write a novella. Yeah, he will do. I believe in you, Thomas. And that one's an interesting one so far. It's got a different feel to it. I'm very, very excited to go back into this world in 2022. Now, joint with this as my number one of 2022 is 11th Cycle by Kian N Ardalan. As I said before, this one snuck in at the last second to become one of my favourite books of the year. I'm still torn with even saying, is this my favourite book of the year? But no, I can't decide between these books. And there is obviously a recency bias there. And I do like that kind of cyclical thing that actually one of the first books, possibly the first book I started of the year, and the last book I read, or the last book I started at least, they're both number one. I think there's a beautiful mirror to that, a beautiful symmetry. That's the word I was looking for. Now this one, I don't want to give away too much about it. It's a Dark Souls inspired book, and as Kian described it to me, it's inspired by Dark Souls through the world building in a way that's disseminated to the reader. You have these little epigraphs at the beginning of the chapter that kind of give these little snippets from different historical tomes or notebooks of characters from the world, and they kind of give you this sense of the world building. And then we have these little interludes which take place in the realm of the gods that are really trippy, and honestly it's like you're being on mushrooms. Not that I know what that feels like, but that's how I imagine it would feel like. I don't know what Kian was on when he was writing this, but guys, it is trippy. It kind of comes in snippets and bursts. I mean, obviously at the front there's a kind of front-loaded world building, but I think Kian does it rather smoothly, and these characters, they stick with you, man. Nora, Delilah, Erithil, and Chroma. These are our four kind of main protagonists, our main POVs. And this is a dark, but still with a glint of hope, tale about the losses they go through, basically. It kind of starts off when they're children, and we're drawn into this world where it's called Mistland, and basically this world has a mist that encircles it, and you can't go into the mist. And they all live in this town that is kind of at the base of this mountain called Mount Mornia, and that's where the gods lie, and this realm of the gods is up there, and you can't go in there. And we only get very few glimpses in there, and it's incredibly trippy, like I said. And we kind of start off with them as young children, and they very quickly lose their innocence. There's an inciting incident, and basically the entire book comes from the fallout of this one incident that happens, and it's this beautiful slow decline of the world, and this world is beautiful, it's haunting, it's a world that feels like it's aging, it's a beautiful world, but it's also a dark world. Things aren't quite right. Something's not quite right there. There's a hint that it's kind of this decaying kind of world. And in the same way, it reflects that in the lives of the characters, which kind of slowly decay. I'm trying not to say too much because I think this is really one that you have to go in and enjoy. Now, this one definitely deserves the trigger warnings at the beginning. I cried so many times at this one. The prose is just so beautifully rich. I think outside of Janny Wirtz, 100% my favourite prose. Kian knows when to pull back and kind of not give those overly flowery descriptions, but he also knows when to bring some beauty to his writing, and there's a beautiful simplicity as well as a beautiful floweriness to it. And I think to switch between the two, Kian, that really impressed me. And this book, it taught me so much. It taught me so much. I want to read one of my favourite excerpts from it. I won't say where this is from. I won't say what it's about. Just enjoy. I want to do what is right, I stated. But my words held none of the same conviction as before. Then learn to love yourself. Learn to believe in life and to help others because you want to. You are like a guru's compassion. Aimless and alone, you wander the world and feel your self-worth by making sure that others are happy. You give more and more of yourself until there is nothing left, like Mimir the mad. You want to heal the world? Start by forgiving yourself and opening yourself up to the possibilities again. Viewers, that makes me want to cry again, going back to that. Oh man. I think that's such a beautiful message, such a beautiful passage that tells us so much about life, and there's so much wisdom. And I love how there's other things you notice, like Mimi and the man, like little well-building hints just put in there in the middle of this beautiful wisdom and example of compassion. And that's what you get from this book. You get this complex mix of rich well-building, rich characters, and just emotion at its core. And Kian is a master at emotion. Now, as I said, this is a character-rich, a character-driven book, and I think that if there's one thing I'd say is that I wish that the plot had moved forward a little bit, and so that's why I'm offering both We Break Immortals and 11th Cycle, because We Break Immortals is more plot-driven, whilst having those character developments and emotions that are there. It still takes you on that journey, it leaves you crying, and then 11th Cycle is a more character-driven, more mellow, more somber and slow, but not too slow book. Whilst the plot is still there is still an exciting action plot there. And the plot kind of revolves around this idea called the 11th seed, and there's this idea that the king god, the ruler of the gods, he bequeaths a son each time called the seed, and they have to defeat this great evil. And the 11th cycle kind of refers to the birth of that 11th seed, and these characters are all intertwined into that grander tapestry. And I don't want to say too much more for fear of spoiling, but viewers, this book broke me, it made me, it taught me about myself, it helped me move on from some difficult things from my past. There are times that I did laugh, and there's a great beauty in the darkness to this book, and that's one of the best ways I could describe it. So Kian, thank you for drawing me into this world that I adore with every fibre of my being, and thank you, Thomas, for making a world that I can lose myself in for hundreds of hours if I wish to, that I can go back and pick up all those references and look at the sexy maps and pore over all the lore and the world building and still find more. These books are ones that I will treasure forever. If you didn't notice, they were right there at the beginning on my shelf. They are some of my pride and joys, and they will forever hold a place in my heart. So, 11th Cycle, We Break Immortals. Seriously, try both books. I think if you don't like We Break Immortals, you'll like 11th Cycle. If you don't like 11th Cycle, no, everybody's going to like 11th Cycle. So, seriously, 11th Cycle is coming out in about 3 weeks. Pre-order now. I've also got a Reddit post that I did that I'll put down below. And I'm going to do a dedicated review as well as an interview with Kian. And there's so much more coming on 11th Cycle. And I'm sure I'll talk about We Break Immortals again at some point, because I adore both books. And they're books that I'm not a rereader, but they are books that I will be rereading. The audio, I've had a glimpse of the audio of 11th Cycle. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'll definitely be using that for my reread. Thomas, we need an audio of Break Immortals, because I will listen to that all day, every day. Anyway, I rambled on for far too long, but I just need you to understand these books and how they've worked their way into my soul. Right at the end, 11th Cycle, I can't stop thinking about the lessons that I've learned from this. Break Immortals, right at the beginning, I can't stop thinking about the journey that it took me on and what comes next. So I really implore you, these books are really, really worthy of my number one spot of 2022. 2023, I've got lots of exciting things coming. We will see what happens. We will embrace the chaos. I've got a TBR planned out, but as we all know, the mood reading just absolutely destroys it. So we'll take it as it goes. But I just want to thank you all for sticking with me in 2022. I've gone from 0 subscribers to 192. It's just incredible. And thank you to booktubers like Philip Chase and Jimmy Nuts, and that have helped me get there along the way and shared my content and really helped give me a boost. So thank you all. I really hope you stick around. We're going to have a fun year, a crazy year. I'm hoping I'm going to collaborate more with other booktubers, get some more sketches out, get some more reviews out, get some more interviews out. And yeah, from the bottom of my heart, it really means a lot to everyone that watches these videos, and to all you authors that write these books that I love and that reach out to me and interact with me. I adore it, and I don't think you'll ever know just how much it's meant to me that this whole year has kind of changed my life. The beginning of last year was a really difficult time for me, and it was interacting with the authors and getting out of my shell that kind of brought me back to myself again. And these two books played a really important part in that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will be back to my usual self, I'm sure. I'm not normally this melancholy, but these books kind of deserve that, because they are fun books, but they're also serious books, and they tackle some serious topics, and especially 11th Cycle definitely adhere to those trigger warnings. So thank you for watching, thank you for sticking with me. I will be back very, very soon with another video. I'm not sure what it will be, but whichever one I get edited, that'll be exciting. And I've also got an author interview this Saturday with Matt Larkin, and I'm just about to finish his book, The Apples of Idun, on audio, and we're going to be talking about mythology and philosophy and his fantasy books, his travels, and everything in between. So please stick around for an announcement on that. And yeah, have a great day, guys. Till next time.